In a world where injustice often seems to pay better than justice, corrupt leaders get rich, honest people struggle, is it really worth being just? More than 2,400 years ago, Plato tackled exactly this question in Book 1 of the Republic, one of the most influential works in Western political philosophy. Through Socrates, he asks, "What is justice, and why choose it when no one is watching?" Let's dive into the dialogue. The book begins with Socrates and Glaucon heading home from the Piraeus, Athens' port, after attending a religious festival. They're spotted by Polemarchus, along with Adeimantus and a group of friends, who playfully intercepts them on the road and persuades them to postpone their return to the city. He invites them to his house for conversation and to see a torch race later that night. There they join Cephalus, Polemarchus's father, the sophist Thrasymachus, and several others. The conversation starts casually when Socrates greets Cephalus and asks him about old age. Cephalus, enjoying a peaceful old age thanks to wealth and a clear conscience, views justice as a matter of personal integrity. In his view, justice is telling the truth and returning what you have been given. For him, a just life brings tranquility in old age and peace with the gods. Socrates challenges this definition with a famous counterexample. Suppose you borrowed some weapons from a friend when he was in his right mind. Suppose he later went mad and then asked for them back again. Everyone would agree, I imagine, that you shouldn't give them back to him, and that anyone who did give them back, or who was even prepared to be completely truthful to someone in this condition, would not be doing the right thing. Realizing the limitations of his practical definition, Cephalus excuses himself to attend to religious duties, leaving the argument to be inherited by his son, Polemarchus. Polemarchus reformulates his father's idea, quoting the poet Simonides, that it is just to pay everyone what is owed to him, which he interprets as helping your friends and harming your enemies. Socrates dismantles it, referring that we often misjudge who our real friends and enemies are. We can mistakenly treat a bad person as a friend and benefit them, or a good person as an enemy and harm them. Thus, the formula risks doing the opposite of what justice requires, benefiting the wicked and harming the good. Also, harming anyone, even an enemy, makes them worse, more unjust. Even if we correctly identify friends, the good, and enemies, the bad, harming anyone, even an enemy, makes that person worse, specifically more unjust in respect of virtue. But justice, as a virtue, cannot have the function of making people worse in the very respect that defines virtue. Polemarchus concedes the arguments and abandons the definition. The traditional/poetic view of justice collapses. Thrasymachus, the second-generation sophist, bursts in angrily and, reluctantly, presents his definition. I say that justice is simply what is good for the stronger. He argues that in every society, the rulers, the strongest, make laws for their own benefit, and justice is simply obedience to those laws, a benefit to the ruler and a disadvantage to the ruled. He compares rulers to shepherds who fatten sheep not for the sheep's sake, but to shear and slaughter them. In his words, rulers in cities, rulers in the true sense, regard their subjects as their sheep, and that the only thing they're interested in, day and night, is what benefit they themselves are going to derive from them. It is, however, just for subjects to obey their rulers. Thrasymachus shifts the discussion from the individual realm, personal virtue, to the socio-political, power and laws. To him, the truly unjust person is happy and powerful, while the just are exploited fools. This flips conventional morality. Injustice pays. Justice is for suckers. Socrates is not convinced and responds with powerful analogies. First, he refers that every art aims at the good of its object, not the practitioner's own gain. A true ruler is like a doctor, governs for the benefit of the governed, not himself. If rulers rule only for profit, they're not true rulers. In a city of good people, no one would compete to rule. They'd compete to avoid ruling, knowing real leaders serve others. One of the most famous lines of this book says exactly this. If there were ever a city of good men, there would probably be as much competition not to rule as there is among us to rule. That would be the proof that it really is not in the nature of the true ruler to think about what is good for himself, but only about what is good for his subject. The result would be that anyone with any sense would choose to let someone else do good to him, rather than go to a lot of trouble doing good to others. Then, Socrates proves that injustice destroys unity. Even among thieves, pirates, or an unjust city/army, there must be some justice, fairness among themselves, to cooperate and succeed. Pure injustice causes division, hatred, and weakness, making the group an enemy to itself and to the just. In his view, injustice also creates inner conflict. The soul becomes divided against itself, unable to act effectively or find true happiness. Justice brings internal order and excellence, like health in the body. Book 1 ends in an impasse. Socrates deconstructed the traditional definitions of justice, but didn't construct one. He's cleared the ground, exposed the contradictions in our everyday ideas, but he hasn't built the new foundation yet. That's exactly what Book 1 is, a powerful introduction. It introduces the characters, sets the stage, and plants the central question that drives the entire Republic. What is justice? In the following books, Plato, through Socrates, will begin constructing his ideal city, a place where justice can finally be seen clearly, both in the soul and in society. In an increasingly divided world, these ancient lines force us to look inward and question, what does it really take to be a just person? Is justice what suits the strongest, and therefore the mere obedience of the weakest to the laws? Is it worth being just when no one is watching? The next video will be an analysis of Book 2 of the Republic. If this breakdown resonated with you, smash that like button, drop a comment with your thoughts, and hit subscribe so you don't miss the next part. Thanks for watching. See you in Book 2.